Welcome to JGTCR, I'm Cope, and today we are tuning the BMW M3 Let's get into it. GT7 has made most of the M3s very easy to drive, and the 03 is no exception. Make no mistake, this is one of the best feeling road-going vehicles to drive in factory trim. It is a very predictable and easily maneuvered vehicle on circuit. The handling is absolutely brilliant. It is very well behaved even when we start pushing the limits. This BMW M3 does exactly as it's told 99% of the time. The 1% of the time it doesn't, it's because we are pushing much too hard. The steering itself is sharp and responsive, making it quite agile on circuit. The power available is quite decent, and delivery of that power is next to perfect. It is not aggressive by any means, and that power gets to the road quickly and efficiently. When accelerating full throttle, there is a slight sensation of understeer. However, in these moments, if we back off the throttle just 5%, this M3 hooks and rips around the corner. The brakes are also perfect for this application. They slow the car down decently with no janky or wobbly moments. Let's collect our time. Seven minutes, 46.2 seconds. On to the race tune. The race tune for our BMW M3 sees nothing out of the ordinary. The body height adjustment is lower at the front than the rear. This is to deal with some understeer issues we were having. The natural frequency of the suspension sees the rear being softer than the front. This helps us keep rear wheel traction. Our differential settings are rather low. This is to help deal with the aggressiveness of power delivery after modification. Let's see it in action. There is definitely a lot more zip and pep to this M3 after being modified and tuned. Even with default settings, it does drive well, but we gots to tune. This M3 handles rather well. It has good maneuverability and is easily placed on circuit. However, it can still feel understeery when we are on full throttle and pushing out of turns. Again, this is something that we can address if we just back off the throttle 5%. The newfound power is great, but delivery of that power is a bit odd. It seems to be on the borderline between not aggressive and slightly aggressive, and in some scenarios it can actually be both. This ambiguity of power delivery can lead to some poopy pantaloon moments. But if we use a slight degree of caution and a decent amount of throttle modulation, we are far less likely to leave skid marks of any kind. When it comes to braking, this M3 is on point. The brakes are extremely solid with no issues, and there is a good degree of ability to brake and turn. Let's collect our time. 6 minutes, 27.7 seconds. And now the drift tune. A fairly standard drift tune for the M3. The body height adjustment front and rear have been swapped around. We threw on a bit more camber at the rear, and our initial torque of our diff setting is maxed at 60. A few extra tweaks here and there and we're done. Let's go drifting. The BMW M3 is very easy to drift. Even the race tune with just comfort hard tyres works extremely well, but unfortunately with that setup the tail keeps coming around, especially on deceleration. The few tweaks we did make have tightened up the rear end, particularly when under load. The end result is that slides are now smooth and effortless. Transitions happen naturally and don't need a lot of input from us. The steering itself is precise, but more importantly, very light. This gives us a great deal of maneuverability on track. And thanks to the M3's phenomenal balance, adjustments to line and angle of the drift are a breeze. There is a great deal of power available to initiate drifts and keep the fires stoked under the rear wheels. However, the power delivery itself borderlines on being lazy. Fortunately for us, it just falls short of doing so. So keep RPM well in the power band to avoid running into trouble. Let's do an engine swap. This factory trim M3 with just the engine swap has had its balance thrown out. It may not feel like much to begin with, but the more that we drive, the more we realize how big the impact actually is. The handling has suffered immensely. It is now an understeer pig. Every turn we take makes this car feel extremely cumbersome, and in many instances the vehicle decides it will not turn at all. If we turn too hard, too quickly, under brakes or acceleration, it all equals understeer. There is plenty of power available. Unfortunately, it is rather aggressive. We must use high gears and low RPM to not randomly break traction. When the car slides, it tries to drag itself off the circuit, so any kind of drift is not recommended. It can be controlled while drifting, but it's not a nice sensation. The brakes have also suffered quite a lot. The extra weight can definitely be felt, and when paired with the additional speed of the engine swap, it can easily spell disaster. Slowing down does take longer, but it's not consistent. 50% of the brake markers remain good. The rest will have us flying off the track. So use caution when jumping on the brakes until we learn the new braking zones. Let's collect our time. "7 minutes, 27.3 seconds. On to the race tune. Our race tune for the engine swapped M3 is very similar to our factory engined counterpart, but the hards are slightly harder and the softs are slightly softer. Our differential settings are also still quite low. Again, this is to deal with the power delivery and the aggressive nature of how it comes on. Let's see it in action. Dialed in and tuned, the M3 with the engine swap is far better all round. It is nimble enough to move around on circuit with purpose and handles very well. It does still have that understeer issue when exiting corners on full throttle, but once again backing off the gas 5% saves the day. The power delivery has been tamed by our tune substantially. We can now put down the power hard and wheel spin is only a minor factor. When wheel spin does occur, easing off fixes this problem. When drifts and power slides occur, they need to be rectified immediately. This M3 does not like drift at all, and it is snappy tom with a passion. The brakes are incredibly stable, and we can also brake and turn with no issues. Let's collect our time. "6 minutes, 16.4 seconds. Let's take a look at the drift tune. Our drift tune for the M3 with the engine swap is fairly regular. We did add ballast of 20 kilos at a ballast positioning of 25 over the rear wheels, as this gives us more directional drift and push power. Let's drift Suzuka. There is more than meets the eye when it comes to drifting the engine-swapped M3. At first, it may seem a bit odd to drift, but once we are in line with what this vehicle needs from us, the stars align. This BMW is extremely maneuverable on circuit if we maintain between 6 to 8,000 RPM. Not only that, the speed with which we drift increases substantially, saving us 3 seconds per lap. The steering itself is impressive. The front end is light and grippy. It obeys our commands without hesitation. There is power aplenty with an easy bake oven at the rear. And while power delivery may seem lazy out of power band, it is absolutely perfect from low mid-range up. This BMW M3 with the engine swap is extremely versatile when it comes to how we throw the car into turns. So our slides and drifts can be as smooth or as rough as we decide to make them. Whatever we choose, this M3 is on board. And that's all we have for you today, so until next time, keep racing!